The single dad had barely stepped inside the wedding hall when the groom's sister walked straight toward him, her expression serious enough to make him stop in his tracks. She quietly pulled him away from the crowd and whispered that there was something he needed to know before the wedding was over. What she revealed next would force him to confront a painful part of his past and could change his daughter's future forever. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that one small act can change someone's life, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Kindness SPAC for more emotional stories. Daniel Carter was 36 years old, a quiet man who had learned to carry his problems without complaining. He worked long hours at a small logistics company, where most people knew him as dependable but rarely asked what happened after he went home. Daniel was a single father raising his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, in a modest apartment across town. His wife had passed away several years earlier, leaving him with a little girl who still kept her mother's photograph beside her bed. Daniel had never tried to replace what Lily had lost. Instead, he had simply done everything he could to make sure she never felt unloved. Money was always tight. Daniel carefully planned every grocery trip, repaired old shoes instead of buying new ones, and sometimes skipped lunch so Lily could have the things she needed for school. Yet he never complained in front of her. To Lily, her father was the strongest man in the world. She believed he could fix anything, even though Daniel secretly knew there were many things he could never fix. One Friday afternoon, Daniel's coworker, Marcus, invited him to his wedding. Daniel almost refused because he had been working overtime and had no money for an expensive gift. But Marcus insisted that his presence mattered more than any present. So on Saturday evening, Daniel wore his best dark suit, one he had carefully ironed himself, and left Lily with a trusted neighbor. When Daniel entered the elegant wedding hall, he immediately felt out of place. The room was filled with beautifully dressed guests, expensive decorations, and people who seemed to know exactly where they belonged. Daniel stood near the back, hoping nobody would notice his worn shoes or the fact that his suit was several years old. Marcus spotted him and warmly welcomed him. For a few minutes, Daniel forgot his worries. He smiled as his friend exchanged vows, clapped when the guests applauded, and watched the bride and groom begin their new life together. Seeing their happiness brought a strange mixture of warmth and sadness to his heart. Then, just as the reception began, Marcus's younger sister, Emily, approached Daniel. She was 29, confident, and normally cheerful, but tonight her face looked unusually serious. Without explaining much, she asked Daniel to follow her toward a quiet hallway away from the music and guests. Daniel wondered whether he had somehow offended someone. He followed nervously until Emily stopped beside a large window overlooking the garden. What she told him made Daniel completely still. Emily explained that she had been looking through some old family documents earlier that week when she discovered a name connected to Daniel's late wife. At first, she assumed it was simply a coincidence. But after making a few phone calls, she realized the connection was real. Daniel struggled to understand what she was saying. Emily then revealed that her father had once worked closely with Daniel's wife on a community project. Years earlier, Daniel's wife had helped organize financial assistance for families struggling after unexpected tragedies. Among the records was a letter she had written about Daniel and Lily. She had described Daniel as a hardworking father who refused to accept help because he wanted to provide for his family himself. But there was something else. Daniel's wife had secretly arranged for a small education fund to be created for Lily, believing that one day her daughter might need support for school or college. The fund had remained untouched because the family who managed it had lost contact with Daniel after his wife's death. Emily's father had recently discovered the old account while organizing his records. Daniel could barely breathe. For years, he had believed that after his wife died, every dream she had for their daughter had died with her. Yet she had apparently left behind one final act of love, a future she had tried to protect without ever telling him. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. He remembered how his wife used to talk about Lily's education, always saying that their daughter deserved every opportunity they could give her. He had assumed those were simply dreams. Now he understood that she had been planning. Emily handed him a small envelope containing copies of the documents. Daniel held it carefully, almost afraid that opening it would make everything disappear. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to cry. Emily did not try to stop him. She simply stood beside him,